Welcome to Distress to Joyful, Bailey's Way. I'm your host, Bailey Raber, here to enlighten you and the rest of the world about one of the most misunderstood mental health disorders out there, bipolar disorder. In each episode, we'll learn more about my personal journey with bipolar II disorder, how I've struggled with it, and how I've learned to overcome those struggles. Together, we'll laugh, we'll cry, and most importantly, we'll have fun. You'll leave each episode feeling hopeful and stocked full of useful information on how you can better yourself and the world around you. Hello, friends. Thank you for being patient with me last week while there was no new episode because I got behind. I'll be completely transparent. For those of you who don't follow Distress to Joyful Bailey's Way on Instagram or Facebook, you might want to do that. That is where I put any announcements, like if I'm going to skip a week of episodes or, what the hell ever, they always go there. So if there is not an episode, always head to the social media to find out what's going on. Because this time, I had two options. I was running behind. I didn't have everything prepared like I needed to. It was Monday morning. I was supposed to have already released the episode. This episode right here I'm recording now. So I had two options. Either A, bust everything out, work as fast as I can to get it done, and stress myself out in the process, because that would definitely have stressed me out and probably sent my anxiety through the roof. Or B, wait a week. Wait until the following week and release the episode then, give myself time, prepare better, come up with, a much more calmer approach instead of just rushing things through. So I chose B, if you hadn't already figured out. And I'm glad I did, guys, because I think one of the things that we as humans do, and I know I am guilty of it 1,000%, we put deadlines on ourselves, and then when the deadline approaches and we're not there yet, we rush to finish it. And I'm an achiever, and so I know I have done this time and time again. And so one of the things that I've been working on the last year is to say, you know what? Fuck it. I set a deadline because a deadline is important for a goal. Don't get me wrong, you do need deadlines. Otherwise, you're not going to focus and try to get a goal completed. But if you hit that deadline and you are not done yet, and it's not a life or death situation, this is not for, work, and this is not for school, it's just for your own personal project, whatever you're doing, do yourself a favor and just extend the deadline a little. Don't give up and don't rush to finish it. Just give yourself a little more time. Be gracious towards yourself. I am working on giving myself grace this year. I am terrible at it. But I will say, ever since I got with Moni, started dating Moni. We're married now. Everybody knows. But ever since Moni walked into my life, there we go. That's a better way to say that. I have gotten so much better at giving myself grace because this man gives me so much grace that I have learned to start doing that for both myself and for him and for others a lot better. Because I don't know why, as humans, I think it's a lot easier to give other people grace than to give ourselves. At least I know that's always been my problem. So if that's something you struggle with, just know you're not alone. I'm right there with you, and we will learn and improve together, right? Yes. So before I move into the episode today, I've got two things I want to share with you. The first one is this new book that I'm reading. It's called The Book of Forgiving, and it's by Desmond Tutu and his daughter, which I cannot pronounce her name to save my life. Her name is spelled, let me find it. It's not on the front of this because this is a library book. M-P-H-O. They're from South Africa, both of them are, and so I'm not even going to try because I know I'm going to screw it up. But I picked up this book purposely, and I feel like I am very good about coming across books that I need at certain times in my life. So forgiveness is something I am not good at. It was not modeled towards me. I mean, hell, last I remember, when I was 26 years old, my mom still had a grudge against my birth father, which that was 26 years in the past. and she still had a grudge and anger towards him. So forgiveness wasn't modeled towards me, and in general, it is hard for humans as a whole. They even talk about it in this book. I'm only 37 pages in, and they talk about how forgiveness does not come easily for even them, these authors of this book. So I was actually reading Rising Strong by Brene Brown. I'm trying to get through it a second time, and she mentioned this book, and I was like, well, fuck, man. Brene knew what I needed. Brene said I need to read this book, and she's right, because I'm at a spot in my life where I have somebody I really need to work on forgiving, and it's been really, really hard. But more importantly, I need to work on forgiving my mother, which is really, really hard. I'm past the anger stage. If you haven't if you haven't tuned into Mother Dearest or I Wish My Parents Would Have, first of all, I'm going to put both of those links in today's show notes. And second of all, you should tune in. So that way you can kind of gain a good understanding as to my non-existent relationship with my parents. And a lot of it is due to hurt, past hurts, childhood trauma, things that I really need to let go of. And it's been hard because, like I said, these things weren't modeled towards me. So I have to learn. And being an adult means we have to unlearn bad habits, bad examples, all of that, and learn healthier ways to do things. And one of them for me is the Book of Forgiving. So I'll keep y'all updated on how this is going. Don't hold me to this, but I'm thinking that I will do a separate YouTube-only episode where I am talking about this book and how it's helped me and what I have learned from it. And just the book itself, like what to expect if you choose to read it. I've heard that it's very hard to read. I remember seeing that on... I don't like to read reviews on books or things like that because it's opinion-based, but I did see a lot of people on the reviews for this say that it was hard to read. I did look at this one. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. And I have a self-reflection corner for today. So I touched a little bit on this on my Instagram page earlier this year, and I say earlier this year, February 27th to be exact, if you want to go find that short little reel on my Instagram. But I recently, on February 27th, had a really, really great therapy session with my therapist. She even clapped a little bit and said this was a great session afterwards, which obviously felt so amazing. But something that I realized during that session was that, wow, the reason why, as an adult, I have struggled with being agile and being flexible, specifically with plans, is because growing up, I was not allowed to do things if it wasn't in the plan. So, for example, if I went and had a sleepover at my friend's house, and the next day we're hanging out, we're going to church. I did that a lot with friends. I went to their churches. And afterwards, they want to go out to eat. Well, my parents were expecting that I was going to come home right after church. So if I called them and said, hey, we're going to go out to eat, 9 out of 10 times the answer would be like, no, you need to come home now. Like, you didn't tell me about this yesterday before you went to the sleepover. You got to come home. And that was a constant struggle of if I didn't tell them the plan ahead of time, then I couldn't participate. And it happened so many times, and so much disappointment came through from that. And I think what happened is I got used to always having to stick to the plan. Always doing what is planned, and that's it. We don't change the plan. We don't, switch things up. We do what's planned. So as an adult, it became hard for me to be agile and be flexible with plans. If I'm going, to said bar with a friend and she wants to switch it up, sometimes that would be hard. The biggest thing that I found that was really, really hard, if you have not tuned into Travel Tales #2 from last year, I believe it's Hot Springs, Arkansas with Friends, something like that. That's the title. Something around that line. It's definitely Travel Tales #2. I know this to be a fact. But If you haven't tuned into that, I highly recommend that you do, because I talk about how things did not go as planned and how that affected me and how I learned from that and how that specific trip has helped me to grow into a much more flexible, agile, go with the flow human. Because here's the thing. Life will throw curves at you. Things will change, things will go unexpectedly, things will not go as planned. You can either fight it and be angry and upset and, irritable and all of the negative emotions associated with when things don't go the way they're supposed to. Or you can learn to be flexible and be agile and just have more ease in your life. Something changes, great, okay, learn to go with it. Being a part of Indian culture in the way that I am, because I married into Indian culture, I have really, really, really had to learn this. And it was a very hard lesson. But now that I've been able to overcome some of these, past notions of always having to do what's planned, life has gotten so much more chill, so much more fun. So many fun, unexpected things have happened because I've learned to just let go and just fucking go with it. So, that said, if any of you guys also struggle with the feelings of things have to go as planned, I really encourage you to sit down with your journal and try to figure out where that came from. Why do you feel like that? Why do you think that things always have to go as planned or they can't happen? What happened in your life that may have put these ideas into your head that it has to go as planned or it can't happen at all? What is it for you? I just told you what mine was. Maybe yours is similar, maybe something else. Who knows? But when you can get to the bottom of it, you can learn how to move forward with it in a much healthier and more relaxed way, I should say. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into today's episode, How to Cope with Losing Friends. Disclaimer, I'm going to try to keep this episode short. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, do that. We will find out. But first off, I want to start out by saying that when I'm talking about coping with losing friends, right there, losing friends, I'm not talking about when a friend passes away. That is not at all what this topic is focusing on. Instead, I am focusing on when a friendship dissolves. When you stop being friends with somebody or they stop being friends with you, which unfortunately has happened to me more than once in the past few years. So I have a little bit of experience with this, and it's not that I'm happy to say that, but unfortunately it is what it is. So have you ever heard the phrase that people enter your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime? Well, let me just tell you that within the past couple of years, I've had 4 different friends enter into my life for a reason. And also most of them a season, but definitely for a reason for sure. Though I didn't really understand what the reason was until the friendship dissolved and I looked back on it and kind of figured things out. But when a friendship falls apart, it is often really, really awful. It sucks. It's painful or hurtful, depending on how things fell apart. And it can be sometimes devastating. So I found an article on healthline.com titled How to Cope When You Lose a Best Friend, written by Crystal Raypole, that says the following. Your grief might be complicated by the fact that society doesn't always acknowledge the significance of friendships in the way that it does romantic relationships or familial bonds. Y'all, I cannot even begin to tell you how true this is. We are, quote, allowed to mourn a breakup or when we have to choose to put our mental health first and break ties with a family member. All of those are, socially acceptable. But when it comes to friendship, I personally have never heard anyone talk about how sad it is that they are no longer with such and such person, or that, they're grieving the loss of a friendship, or they're really hurt by this friendship ending because of XYZ. Rarely do I hear those types of things said. So I would like to change that. And I truly hope that this episode will get this conversation going because, I personally think that sometimes losing a best friend is just as hurtful and upsetting and painful as losing a romantic partner. That might sound weird, but it's true. That's how I have felt with some of these friendships, and you may or may not have felt the same way too. So if you have felt the same way, please know that you're not alone. But if you haven't, then I am so, so happy for you because it fucking sucks. It fucking sucks. So before I dive into coping strategies, which is what the whole point of this specific episode is, I do want to take a little time to discuss how losing some of these friends over the years has affected me. So I'm not going to mention any names, but I do think that it's important to talk about why these friendships ended, along with how they made me feel, plus what I did to help myself move forward. I think that's those first two things are super important before we get to the coping, because I think that, again, because this is not a socially acceptable thing to do, to mourn a loss of a friendship, I think that we need to discuss why these friendships ended and also how it affected me. Because maybe you really don't understand how losing a friend has affected you. Maybe you shoved it down like I used to do for years. So the reason why I'm choosing to disclose these friendships ending is because unfortunately all of these were very, very unhealthy from the get-go. And I didn't really understand that until after they had dissolved and I looked back on the relationship. So I'm also hoping that by talking about these unhealthy friendships that I found myself in, that this will be helpful and serve as a guide to you so that you won't make any of these same mistakes. Because let me just tell you, there were some red flags that I was unaware of and also that I overlooked in some of these friendships. And red flags are important, guys. It's really important to be able to see a red flag. If it's waving in your face, see it, notice it, and take it seriously, because that is something I have not always done. So for funsies, I'm going to use the names of the 4 female leads in Sex and the City in place of the people's real names when I'm talking about these friendships, because why the hell not? Also, fun fact, I've been watching Sex and the City while I do my sewing lately. I always have some TV on in the background when I'm sewing. It's typically always Gossip Girl, just going on repeat. But now it's Sex and the City, so I think that's why Carrie, Miranda, Charlotte, and Samantha are here for you. Okay, so let's take a moment and talk about my friendship with Carrie. So Carrie came into my life and we seemed to hit it off very, very quickly. She asked me for my phone number, which I was like, wow, like great, because I'm typically the person who kind of like pushes friendships on other people. Are you surprised? I'm an extreme extrovert and I tend to attract a lot of introverted friendships. So I'm used to being the one to, step up first, do the first, like, hey, let's hang out, that kind of thing. But Carrie did that for me. And Carrie was actually pretty introverted. So that was very interesting that she, started this whole friendship with me, even though that's typically not her personality as an introvert. So again, we became friends very quickly. I started hanging out with her and her groups of friends. I brought another friend into the group. I took her to parties with me of friends that I knew. She took me around with her friends. And we became really close really fast. I could always call her and chat on the phone, talk about life. I was going through a lot of bullshit at my job at the time, so she was always ready to listen and be a good friend until she no longer was. So at the time, I was working on losing some weight. And when she and I first met, I was very, very overweight. I was not my heaviest, but I was pretty close to it. I was probably 20 pounds down from my heaviest weight. I'm not going to say any numbers, but that. So when she and I first met, I was heavier than she was. And then after a while, I started super focusing, like hyper focusing on what I was eating. I stopped drinking alcohol and I changed my lifestyle and I started losing weight. It started coming off. I started looking good. I started feeling good, feeling confident about my body for the first time in years. And after a while, I noticed that she was starting to kind of tear me down and just say things that they weren't nice. She was doing things that were kind of fucked up. And I was just allowing it to happen. And I think that's because I felt like our friendship was good. And so I also realized, this was a recent realization, that I tend to take people's actions towards me that seem loving. I tend to take those to heart, and I tend to gravitate towards people who express what feels like love to me. Because I came from a very, very broken home. I didn't get the love that I needed as a child. And so I've always, sought that out in other people. And she was good at that. She was good at making me feel cared for and making me feel loved. Although, looking back, I'm not sure if she actually meant any of those things or if she was just doing it to feel good about herself. I don't really know. But after a while, her tearing me down, I started to realize that, okay, she was, at the beginning, she was using me to feel better about herself. And then when things shifted, when I started to lose a bunch of weight and she didn't, that's when she started tearing me down. When I was no longer the fat friend. When I stopped being the fat friend is when she stopped being so loving and nice and caring towards me. And it got to be so bad, you guys, that I literally was going to have a conversation with her and try to work some things out. I was going to hold her accountable for being so mean to me. And instead, she canceled on me, called me screaming on the phone, said some really nasty things. Unfortunately, I was not in a great mental place at the time, so I said some really nasty things back, which I do feel remorse for. And then that was that. The friendship was over. Which really sucked because, again, I thought she was a good friend. Looking back, I now understand it was more manipulation than anything else. But what's even worse is she went behind my back and made up lies about me and told them to one of our other friends, and that friend stopped being my friend with me. That friend blocked me on social media. She wouldn't have anything to do with me. And I found out about these lies because that friend's mom was amazing. I loved her mom. I would have chats with her all the time. She was such a wonderful woman. And I went over and chatted with the mom, and she told me that, Carrie had told her and her daughter that I was talking shit about their whole family, which was not true. I loved these people so much, and I was very hurt by that. So that's why, that friend stopped being friends with me. And I realize now that, you know what? That friend chose to believe Carrie instead of confronting me with the issue. So I think things are better this way. It's better than I'm not friends with that friend. Because somebody who was a true friend with me would come to me and say, hey, Carrie told me you were talking shit about me behind my back. What the fuck's up with that? But this friend didn't do that. And so there goes 2 friendships from the one. So what ended up happening here is, again, this was years ago, and I was not at the mental state that I am now. And so I was angry and I was upset. And then I also stopped going certain places where I might run into Carrie because I didn't want to have to run into her after all of this, which sucked because I changed my whole routine and all kinds of things to no longer run into Carrie, which was shitty. And it felt shitty. And I just felt angry about everything. I didn't feel grief. I didn't feel anything else but anger. I just let anger control me. And I started hanging out with other friends instead and just let that one go. Which I wish I would have done more coping and, better, not skills, but I wish I would have taken the time to journal and think about this and how it affected me. Because maybe I would have sat down, figured out some of those red flags, and then stopped Miranda, Charlotte, and Samantha from coming in and fucking shit up too. So let's move on to Miranda. So Miranda was a really great friend of mine. We hung out all the time. She and I were really good friends back before I met Moni. We, one thing I noticed after a while is that she would only invite me to hang out with her and her friends on occasion. It wasn't very often, which was kind of hurtful. I did notice that happening on a regular basis, but I didn't say anything about it because her and my friendship was good. So I let that red flag slide. She would only invite me around every so often, and it depended on who the crowd was. So then when Moni and I started dating, our entire friendship changed. Everything changed. She was also dating at the time. She was kind of struggling with relationships, and so I gave advice here and there. So one of the things that I really mentioned that I strongly encouraged, and I strongly encourage this for any of you guys listening right now, so please listen closely if you're single. But when Moni and I first started dating, we didn't have sex for months. For months. Until months went by, and then we finally, engaged. But I kept telling her, hey, I know that sex is great and that it's tempting to sleep with somebody on the first date, second date, third date, whatever. But I found that him and I waiting, I was able to truly see that he was here for me. He wasn't here just for sex. He wasn't here to mess around. He showed me in many different ways that he was here for me and he was here to stay. So I was encouraging her to do that too, which she did not want to do, and that's fine. Live your life the way you want to live. That was just my recommendation based upon how it worked out for me. At some point, I don't know where this came from, but she started accusing me of judging her based upon what she was doing. And I just sat there and I'm like, okay, that's not what's happening. I love you. I want the best for you. And so I'm giving advice based upon what's worked for me. You can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to listen to me. But she took that for some reason as judgment from me. And then things just kept getting worse and worse and worse. She kept criticizing me. She kept only calling me when she needed to vent. That became a really big reason why we stopped being friends. Because anytime the phone rang and it was her, I always knew that it was just going to be dumping. She was dumping all of her negativity on me. And guys, friendship, yes, you should be able to vent and, express your feelings about whatever's happening in your life that may be shitty right now towards your friends. But if you're only calling to do that, and that is all you are doing, please understand that the person on the other end of the phone who is constantly receiving that negativity and nothing else from you, that shit will wear them down. That's exactly what happened to me. I kept getting worn down, just being rained on with negativity over and over and over again. And then I realized, you know what? What is this friendship? I'm here for her. I'm listening to her constantly, dump her negativity on me. But she wasn't doing anything for me. She canceled plans on me last minute more than once, although she continued to, her friendships and relationships with other people. And I was seeing this all over social media. And it was really upsetting. It was really upsetting that she wasn't there for me when I needed her to be there, but I was constantly always there. So that friendship, eventually I had to decide, you know what, I can't do this anymore. If you're not going to be there for me, then this is a one-way street I'm not willing to keep driving down. I'm going to take a U-turn and go another direction, and I'll let you stay over there. And I will love you from afar. And that's just how it's going to have to be, because I have to put my mental health first, and this is really, really starting to tear mine down. So that one was hard because she and I had been friends for a very, very long time. And I did a lot of journaling about that one. I talked with my therapist a lot. I journaled a lot. And those things really helped. It did take a while to get over it. She blocked me on social media, which is the best thing because I didn't have to see her anymore on social media, which definitely made things easier. But yeah. So, simultaneously, while I was friends with Miranda, I was also friends with Charlotte. So, Charlotte and I became friends on my account. I remember I approached her, I asked her to, like, go hang out, yada, yada, yada. And we became friends, and she was a very good friend at first. She was always there for me whenever I needed her. I always felt bad because I felt like she was never, utilizing me in our friendship, quote unquote. Like I kept telling her, you can call me if you need me. If you need me to be there, I will show up. I can be someone you can vent to, like, please. Because I felt like I was, like, kind of using her because she was, again, always there for me. But I never, quote, had to be there for her. And I felt bad because I had just, gotten out of a friendship with somebody who was only dumping on me. I didn't want to be that person towards Charlotte. Well, after a while, I started to realize that I was Charlotte's, quote, charity case. Charlotte liked to do things for me to make her feel better about herself. So I don't know if this is true or not, but if you know anything about the Enneagram, if not, there's an episode I have recorded about the Enneagram. Go check that out and listen to it. But the Enneagram is a personality scale. It's a 1 through 9 type thing, and it kind of helps us to understand our personalities as an adult, that they were shaped that way because of our childhoods. So I think that Charlotte was possibly an Enneagram 2, which is the helper. It is somebody who does things in order to receive love from somebody else. They give with an expectation to get in return. I have dealt with a lot of Enneagram 2s in my life, and Charlotte's behaviors kind of made me think that that might be her. So, again, after a while, I realized I was Charlotte's charity case. She was doing things for me to receive all the praise and the thanks, and she would give me things like, stuff that she would have given to Goodwill, she would give it to me. So I realized after a while, goddamn, like I'm her charity case. She feels better about herself because of me. Like, that's super shitty. And I also realized that part of the reason why she didn't go to me for things was because me being her charity case, her little project, she thought of herself as better than me for a while until things started to shift and I started doing better in life. Like, guys, I used to be a hot fucking mess. I used to be a disaster. And life has gradually gotten better because I have worked really, really hard to create a better life for myself. And Charlotte and I were friends in that transition when I was working towards creating a better life for myself. And as things started getting better for me, her behaviors towards me started to shift. They started to get nasty. They started to get mean. She started to ignore me and then not tell me why she was ignoring me. She would tell me she was upset with me, but then not tell me why she was upset with me. And it was very confusing and hurtful. And all of this came crashing down to an end when she started trying to make decisions for me. So I had introduced her to some of my friends previously, and we kind of made our own little group. We had a little group of friends, and I was the common denominator of everybody in this group. I tend to do that a lot. I love to bring people together. I love my friends to be friends with each other because I love being around people. I really do. I love people. The more I can have around, the better. So if my friends can be friends with each other, fuck yeah. Now we can have fun events and do fun things as a group, and I love it. I love it. So Charlotte started to make decisions for me in the group chat, telling me that I was too tired to attend the group event. She started picking times to hang out with these other friends that were conflicting with my work and school schedule. And she did this on more than one occasion to where finally I had to say, enough is enough. You started being mean to me. You started telling me things and how I'm going to do things, and I can't do this anymore. I can't. I have to take a step back. And that's what I did. And when I took this step back, I was angry. I was so angry. How dare she treat me like this? How dare I not see the warning signs ahead of time? I am more self-aware than this. I can't believe I didn't see what she was doing. I didn't understand she was manipulating me. I'm better than this. I should have known better. All of those feelings just came flooding through. And it was a bunch of anger. A bunch of anger. Now, I will say I'm proud of myself because when I let this friendship go, I did it in such a much more gentle and caring way than I ever have before. And I really thought about how it might be received, and I did not want it to be filled with anger. But I did have to send a message and just let things go because I couldn't keep taking this. I can't keep being treated like shit by somebody who I looked out for and cared for and considered a friend. That's not what friends do. That is not what friends do. And so I did a lot of thinking. I talked it over with my therapist. I literally took a couple weeks before I decided to write a message that I talked over with my therapist and send it. And I had to spend a couple of weeks afterwards just kind of grieving and mourning that, like, wow, this friendship was not what I thought it was. It was not what I thought it was. And that sucks. And that's sad. And I can't reach out to her to go do things with her anymore because she's not good for me. And I can't tell her how excited I am about XYZ because we're not friends anymore. And it's the same kind of emotions you might feel when you break up with somebody or when you stop talking to a family member. It feels sad. It feels sad and it really sucks. And I journaled about it a lot. A lot. And so lastly, there was Samantha. So my friendship with Samantha took off very, very fastly, like super quick, which I now understand is a red flag. We'll get to that in just a moment. So Samantha came into my life and we hit it off really quick and I felt comfortable with her. So I gave her a lot of information up front that was sacred and private and should have been earned. Things about me that were not on my podcast. And it's just my story that you have to earn. Brene Brown talks about it in Rising Strong that people have to earn the right to hear our stories. And I did not listen to Brene when I was beginning this friendship. I divulged a lot of personal information up close. Early on, she did the same thing, so everything felt okay. I felt comfortable. But after a while, she started canceling on me. And it was always last minute, and it happened so many times. And she would use the same excuse every single time, which I am a compassionate woman. I have a heart. And so if you give me what feels like a valid reason to cancel on me literally 5 minutes before you're supposed to be at my house, I am going to sit there and I'm going to be upset, but I'm going to be understanding and be like, you know what? It's okay. I understand. But can you use that same exact excuse 15 times in less than a year? See, that's some fishiness that I completely just looked past, you guys. That was a red flag in my face that I just completely chose not to look at. Because again, I thought Samantha and I were super great friends and that everything was awesome. So then I realized after a while that it was a one-sided friendship, yet again. Except this was a different one-sided friendship. Different than what I had with Miranda. What was going on with Samantha was I was the one reaching out. I was the one setting up plans. I was always the one to say, hey, like, let's double date. You and your partner, me and my partner, let's do these things. And then they would never follow through. They wouldn't commit. They wouldn't do it. And things started to get very, very weird and very frustrating and very hurtful. She reached out to me one day and I told her, like, I'm not in a good place mentally. I'm not. I've been very depressed, blah, blah, blah. And then she ghosted me. And then I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks. And that was really, really hurtful. And that was one of the big things that helped me to understand that, oh my God, this is yet again another one-sided friendship. Someone that I was constantly showing up for and being there for and being a shoulder to cry on. But when it was my turn, Samantha just wasn't there conveniently. And then after a while, I'm not going to get into any gritty details, I realized I was being, yet again, manipulated by somebody. And a couple months after I had this big realization, I saw something. I think it was the holistic psychologist, somebody on Instagram, Facebook. I read something and it talked about how manipulation can feel a lot like love. And that is when I knew, fuck, I so easily fell into this trap that Samantha created for me because when she was manipulating me, she was making me feel loved. And I gravitate towards that. That is my weakness. And fuck, man. Oh, fuck. It made sense. It made me feel better about the situation because when we stopped being friends, I was fucking pissed. Oh my God, this is yet another friend who was using me. How the fuck did I let a fourth friend use me? What the hell? Guys, it was anger galore. It was rage. I took my journal and I raged in my journal. And I also cried a lot. I cried a lot because I thought that this person was such a good friend to me. But I look back and see that no, they weren't. It was a story I made up in my head. They really weren't that good of a friend. But if there was something I was excited about, that was still the person I wanted to go tell. Although Samantha's not around anymore, and Samantha's not my person to go tell things anymore. And it really sucked. And it was really, really hard. It was really fucking hard. So I want to start talking about some coping mechanisms really quick. And a couple more things. I know I've already mentioned one 1,000 times, journaling. But in that article that I mentioned earlier on healthline.com, which again, you can find that in the show notes, they discuss 7 different ways to help you cope when you lose a friend. So I'm not going to talk about all of them because some of them are not relevant whatsoever. So if you want to read the article, make sure to hit up the show notes on whatisheybellsdoing.com. Or if you're tuning in on your favorite podcast platform, go to the episode description and you can click the link to the show notes there. So what they list out is number 1, come to terms with your feelings. And guys, when they say that, they don't mean just the anger. Because 9 out of 10 times, anger is masking an actual feeling that's there. Are you feeling sad because you're no longer friends with this person? You can't reach out to them when something exciting has happened. Are you feeling hurt because whatever they were doing towards you was super painful and hurtful? Are you feeling disappointed that this person behaved in a way that you thought they would never do because you thought you guys were too good of friends for that? What are you actually feeling? Because if it's anger, there is something buried under that anger. Anger likes to come in and pretend like it is what you're feeling, but it's not. It is masking something else that is deeper inside you. And with anger being my go-to emotion, I can fucking guarantee you that that is it. Anger is covering up something else that you really don't want to feel. So the best way to figure out what your feelings are is to journal about it. Journaling helps so much. But besides just that, it allows you to freely get your thoughts out. If you're feeling rage, if you're feeling anger, get all of that out of you in your journal. Because once you get that out, I guarantee you, you'll have uncovered the real emotion that's up under all that anger. You just gotta wade through the anger first and wade through the rage first. You can also talk to a therapist or some friends, but they say in this article that keeping a journal is actually a lot easier because there's no one to judge you, or you aren't going to feel judged by somebody else sitting there listening to you rage on about this friendship that's now over. So that's always a good place to start. I will always also recommend talking to a therapist. Again, I have done that. I've mentioned how I actually discussed 3 of these 4 friendships with my therapist, and she was helpful. She was really helpful. She helped to guide me in a way that suited how I want to show up in the world and also be kind and honor the friendship for what it was. Turn to others for support. Now, this one, if you can't afford a therapist, I totally understand. But sometimes talking things out with somebody that you can trust, maybe a friend that you have had in your life longer, someone who knows you really well, someone who you know is a good friend to you. Turning towards them might also be helpful as well. Give it time. Now, this I also know to be true because time has allowed me to sit with these emotions, to process them, and to let go of the anger, to let go of the grief, to let go of the hurt. But you got to process through them, y'all, and that takes time. And lastly, they mentioned to take care of your well-being. And they mentioned this, I think, more so like if you lost a friend for death, like via death. But when you're upset about losing a friendship, like, for example, when I was raging on about how things, went down with Samantha or Charlotte, I didn't want to take care of my body. I didn't want to eat healthy. I wanted to go emotionally eat all kinds of garbage. I didn't want to exercise. I wanted to sit on the couch and watch motherfucking TV. Neither of those things are taking care of my well-being. So whenever possible, it's super helpful to go exercise and to eat right, because not doing those things will just continue to have you spiraling down. I know from experience, unfortunately. Man, and I had one other one I wanted to mention. I should have mentioned it right when I was thinking about it because I cannot remember right now. Okay, if I think of it later, I'll toss it in the show notes. So I want to close with some final words. Losing a friend can be very, very upsetting. It can suck. It can feel like a breakup. It can feel like this person who was there for you betrayed you. It can feel very upsetting that somebody would treat you this way or that somebody would harm you, whether it was on purpose or not. But here's the thing. I encourage you, if you have lost a friend due to differences or whatever the case might be, and you just aren't talking anymore, I strongly encourage you to also remember the good times of the friendship, to remember the fun that you guys had, to remember how that person impacted your life positively. Because it's really, really easy to sit there and point out all the shit that they did, all of these negatives here and there. That is easy. Trust me, I know. It's a lot harder to sit down and say, but you know what? Even though they did XYZ, they also did ABC. And ABC impacted me positively. Now, unfortunately, there was way more XYZ than ABC, so there wasn't enough good to outweigh the bad, but there was some good in there. And that can be hard to find when you're in your rage. Trust me, I know that too. So once you get to a place when you're past the rage or you're past the grief, just try to be grateful for the good times. Because if somebody came into your life for a reason or a season, there was likely some good within that reason or within that season. Okay? I know it's hard. I know it's really, really hard, but you're doing yourself a favor. And that kind of goes back to the book of forgiving. Again, I'm only like 37 pages in this, so I can't say much about it yet. But I feel like honoring the positives and the good times in a friendship that has gone sour kind of is on the path of forgiving, which is more about you and less about them. It's more about letting go and giving yourself the space to no longer harbor anger and resentment. So lastly, friendship is hard, and I personally feel like the older I get, it can also be harder to maintain friendships. But remember, y'all, all relationships, romantic, familial, friendships, they are all a two-way street. So you must do your part in maintaining the relationship. But you are not obligated to continue a relationship with someone who refuses to do their part. When you do find good friends, hold them close to your heart and invest in them, love them, cherish them, and take responsibility for any of your actions if or when necessary. And most importantly, guys, whenever possible, treat your friends the way that you'd want them to treat you. A little kindness can go a long way, and it tends to be contagious. Okay, we are going to quickly run through one of the week because this has been an extremely long episode. Whoops. But this is a segment designed to bring some positivity into episodes, especially ones that can be really hard, because we do hit some hard topics in this podcast. This is also your opportunity for a shout out. I'm still waiting for y'all to send in your submissions via the website or to email me at whatisheybellsdoing.com. I'm going to peer pressure you every single week until I start getting your responses. So if you're not used to this yet, get used to it or send it in, and then you don't have to hear me complain. So my win of the week is that we just finished booking our next international adventure. I'm so excited. So my husband and I are heading to Germany at the end of July. We're going to visit the, quote, Disney Castle. I will put a link in the show notes if you don't know what that is. I do not know how to pronounce it. I'm not even going to try. And then we're going to hit up a couple other things in southern Germany before we head up to Berlin, where we have some friends who live there. We're going to stay with them a couple days. I'm so excited. He's excited. These are friends that we both spent a lot of time with in India. So they attended his best friend's wedding that happened at the end of January, and we spent a lot of time with Johnke and Max, and now we get to spend time with them in their city of Berlin. It's so exciting. And then we're going to leave Berlin to head to, if you're on YouTube, I'll show you this, Amsterdam. We're going back to Amsterdam, but this time we are going with a group of friends to celebrate Pride. So it's more than just friends. 2 of them are Moni's family members. And oh my God, I'm just so excited. It's going to be so much fun. There's 7 of us on this little trip, and it's going to be a blast. So in the next episode, guys, we're going to flash through all this real quick. We're going to talk about therapy, what it is, and why you need it. This, again, as a reminder, I understand that therapy is expensive and not everybody can afford it. But those of us who can afford it, this is really geared towards you. I really hope to help you understand why making a shift in your lifestyle to be able to afford therapy could be incredibly beneficial towards you. We're going to dive into therapy, the purposes. I'm using research for that point. Oh my God. I'm using research for that part. And then I'm also going to talk about my personal experiences with therapy and how it has positively impacted my life and what I've benefited and how I benefited from being in therapy for 12 years now. But until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Distress to Joyful Bailey's Way. Head on over to whatishaybellsdoing.com to find the resources mentioned throughout this episode. Be sure to follow the show on Instagram at distress2joyful_Bailey's Way and on Facebook at Distress to Joyful Bailey's Way. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favorite podcast listening platform or write a review on Audible or Apple Podcasts. Lastly, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with new episode releases. Until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye!